Imagine waking up tomorrow to discover that the money you once chased is now flowing to you, consistently, effortlessly, because you shifted one invisible thing within yourself. Today, you'll learn a powerful technique that transforms your inner world so profoundly that your financial reality must rise to meet it. This is not wishful thinking. It is deliberate creation, the conscious use of your imagination to embody wealth until it becomes inevitable. The inner state is the silent architect of every experience in your financial world. Long before money appears in your bank account, before opportunities take shape, before circumstances adjust, there is a deeper movement happening within you. This movement is not physical effort, not strategy, not hustle. It is the invisible shift of consciousness, the quiet but powerful decision to inhabit a state of abundance rather than lack. When your inner state changes, everything in your outer world begins to reorganize itself to match that new inner reality. Most people try to change their finances through external force. They chase jobs, pursue clients, stretch themselves thin, and push relentlessly, believing that effort alone creates prosperity. But without realizing it, they are often working from a state of fear, scarcity, or desperation. Action taken from a place of not enough only reproduces more experiences of not enough. This is why someone can work harder than ever and still feel stuck. The outer effort may be intense, but the inner state is still rooted in limitation, and that inner state always wins. Your inner state functions like a magnetic field. It calls into your life the people, situations, ideas, and opportunities that match the vibration of what you are embodying internally. Abundance is not something you chase. It is something you attract by the state you inhabit. When you genuinely feel that wealth is natural for you, that money comes easily, that financial support is always present, your reality begins to shift to confirm that belief. This is not imagination as fantasy. This is imagination as causation. Think of your inner state as the soil in which every financial outcome grows. If the soil is dry, depleted, and barren, filled with assumptions of struggle, fear, or unworthiness, no amount of watering or sunlight will make the seeds flourish. But when the soil is rich with thoughts of ease, worthiness, possibility, and sufficiency, the seeds of prosperity grow effortlessly because the environment supports them. Your thoughts are the seeds, but your inner state is the environment that determines what those seeds become. To occupy a state of abundance means to adopt the inner experience of someone who already has financial freedom. Not someone hoping for it. Not someone begging the universe for a miracle, but someone who has already stepped into the identity of wealth. When you shift into this state, you stop worrying about money. You stop counting every dollar. You stop approaching life from a sense of shortage. You begin to feel a deep internal assurance that you are supported, that money is flowing toward you, that opportunities are finding you even now. That inner calm is evidence that you've moved into a new state. People often misunderstand the power of state. They think they need to force positive thoughts or visualize every hour. But the true shift happens at the level of being, not doing. It is the moment when you no longer identify as someone trying to become wealthy, but as someone who simply is. This shift in identity is subtle, but it is the engine behind every successful manifestation. Your state is your identity in action. It is who you are being on a moment-to-moment basis. And the world always responds to who you are, not what you are trying to achieve. When you shift your state, you begin to notice that new ideas come to you effortlessly. You feel inspired to take actions that feel aligned rather than forced. You encounter people who open doors. You recognize opportunities you would have previously overlooked. You attract solutions instead of problems. You find yourself guided toward decisions that increase your prosperity instead of draining it. These are all reflections of the new state you now occupy. It is important to remember that your outer world is always the delayed reflection of your inner world. That means some of the circumstances you experience today were formed by older states you once occupied. If you shift into abundance today, You may not see immediate evidence, but know that the outer world is already in motion, rearranging itself behind the scenes. The change is happening, and your only responsibility is to remain faithful to the new state rather than slipping back into the old one. The moment you feel a sense of abundance within, real, grounded, unwavering, you have already created the conditions for wealth to manifest. You no longer look for signs because you know the inner shift is the sign. You no longer chase money because you know money is already on its way. You no longer worry about how or when it will arrive because you understand that the state you occupy is the cause and its physical expression is the natural effect. Shift your state and you shift your financial world. When you cultivate an inner reality of wealth, you step into a life where money flows to you, not because you strain for it, but because your inner conviction made it so. The world around you becomes the mirror of your new identity, reflecting abundance everywhere you go. Assuming the feeling of wealth now means stepping beyond the limits of logic and evidence and choosing instead to live from the end, mentally, emotionally, and energetically. It is the deliberate act of embodying the state of already being financially secure, even if your current circumstances appear unchanged. This is not denial of reality. It is the recognition that your inner world is the creative cause and the outer world is the delayed effect. When you choose the feeling before the fact, you set in motion a chain of events that must eventually bring that feeling into physical expression. The moment you adopt the inner state of abundance, you are no longer trying to manifest money. You are allowing money to reveal itself in your life as the natural outflow of who you have already chosen to be. To assume the feeling of wealth now, begin by asking yourself, if I truly had the financial freedom I desire, how would I feel in this moment? What would shift inside me? How would my posture change? How would I breathe? How would I think about myself, my decisions, my future? The answer to these questions forms the emotional blueprint that shapes your new state of being. You are not looking for excitement or adrenaline. You are looking for the quiet confidence, the calm assurance, the deep satisfaction of knowing that everything you need is already provided for. Wealth does not feel like chasing, striving, or stressing. Wealth feels like ease, stability, expansion, and sufficiency. It feels like a firm inner knowing that you are supported and that money flows to you in expected and unexpected ways. As you step into that feeling, even if only for a few moments at first, you are activating the creative power of your imagination. You are engaging the very mechanism through which all outer changes begin. The more you return to that feeling, the more you strengthen it, and the more your subconscious begins to accept it as your true state. Once it accepts this new feeling, it takes over and arranges the outer world to match it. You do not have to figure out how the money will come, which path will open, or what opportunities will emerge. Your job is not to manage the mechanics. Your job is to maintain the inner state. The state you persist in becomes the law that governs your life, including your financial affairs. Many people unknowingly assume the feeling of lack every single day. They worry about bills, fear unexpected expenses, and imagine the worst outcomes long before they happen. These feelings may seem justified, especially when circumstances are stressful, but they are assumptions nonetheless, assumptions that generate more lack. When you consistently feel stressed about money, you are embodying the state of not enough, and the outer world has no choice but to reflect that. This is why stepping into the feeling of abundance now is so radical. It interrupts the old inner conversations and replaces them with a new identity, a new emotional chemistry, and a new worldview. To sustain this feeling, make it a practice to check in with yourself throughout the day. Ask, what state am I in right now? Am I operating from abundance or from fear? Am I thinking as the version of myself who already has financial freedom, or the version who is trying to get it? If you notice yourself slipping into old patterns, do not criticize yourself. Simply return to the feeling of wealth. Your willingness to shift back again and again is what builds the new natural state. Over time, the feeling becomes effortless, it becomes familiar, it becomes who you are. Imagination is the workshop where this feeling is cultivated. When you imagine checking your account and seeing it full, when you imagine paying for something without hesitation, when you imagine receiving unexpected money, you are not fantasizing. You are constructing the emotional experience that your subconscious accepts as true. The key is to feel it now, not later. Now is the only moment creation occurs. Now is the moment that defines your identity. Now is where you step into the version of yourself who does not wonder how money will show up. They simply know it will. The world may attempt to persuade you that you should wait until your finances change before you feel secure. But waiting is a form of postponing creation. The moment you postpone the feeling, you postpone the manifestation. The world responds to your dominant state, not your wishes, not your words, not your efforts. When the feeling of wealth becomes your inner atmosphere, steady, consistent, unquestioned, the outer world must conform. This inner shift affects your behavior too. When you feel wealthy within, your decisions reflect confidence rather than fear. You speak differently. You carry yourself differently. You say yes to new opportunities because you believe in your own expansion. You stop making choices from scarcity and start choosing from sufficiency. People respond to this shift. Circumstances reorganize. Financial channels open. You begin to notice synchronicities, new ideas, new invitations, and new pathways that all align with abundance. These are not coincidences. They are reflections of your new inner state. The feeling you assume becomes the atmosphere in which your life unfolds. When that feeling is rooted in wealth, everything around you begins to echo it. And the more natural that feeling becomes, the faster and more effortlessly money flows into your life, because you are no longer seeking it. You are embodying the version of yourself for whom wealth is simply normal. When you speak from the end, you are not describing a desire, you are declaring a reality. This approach reshapes your identity at the deepest level, because the words you use are not empty statements, they are signals to the subconscious that this is the truth you choose to embody. When you say, "I am financially secure," you are stepping into the version of yourself who already possesses abundance. You are occupying that state now, not waiting for something external to give you permission. Speaking towards something keeps it at a distance. Statements like, "I will have money," "I hope money comes soon," or "one day I'll be wealthy," reinforce the idea that wealth is separate from you, somewhere in the future, not yet yours. Your subconscious mind does not understand time, it understands only the state you are presenting in the present moment. So when you declare that something will happen later, you are instructing your subconscious to continue holding it in the later category. Never arriving, always postponed. Speaking from the end is completely different. When you say, "Money comes to me freely," "I always have more than enough," you are not wishing for a future event, you are inhabiting a present identity. You are setting your inner environment to match the experience of already being abundant. This shift is profound because the subconscious begins building your outer world in alignment with the identity you speak from, not the one you hope to reach. Speaking from the end means using the language of completion. Think about it in terms of emotion. If you were someone who already had financial ease, security, and overflow, how would you speak? Would you talk about needing, wanting, hoping, or trying? Or would your words flow from gratitude, confidence, and expectancy? When you declare things as already true, you activate the emotional vibration that corresponds to the fulfilled desire. You call forth the feeling. The feeling then becomes the evidence your subconscious accepts as real, long before the physical world catches up. This is why the phrases you use are so important. Words shape states, and states shape experiences. When you speak from the identity of someone prosperous, you are rewriting your inner self concept. You are teaching your mind that wealth is your normal, your natural, your expected condition. And the moment the mind accepts something as natural, It begins gathering supporting evidence. Opportunities, ideas, actions, and outcomes begin aligning with that new state. Speaking from the end also removes the sense of strain that often accompanies financial desires. When you talk about money as something you hope for, you feel the gap. When you speak as though the desire is already fulfilled, the gap dissolves. You enter the feeling of completion, and from that feeling comes calm, clarity, and confidence. You no longer look for signs with urgency because you already operate as the version of yourself who possesses what you once lacked. Imagine two people. One says, "I really need more money. I hope things get better soon." The other says, "My finances are improving daily. I am always taken care of. Money flows to me in ways I can't even foresee." These two individuals are living in completely different states. Even if their current bank balances are identical, their internal worlds are worlds apart. The first person is reinforcing lack, the second is reinforcing abundance. And the subconscious responds to the second person not because of effort, but because of assumption, the assumption carried through words spoken from the end. There is power in speaking as though the wish is already fulfilled, because it bypasses the logical mind. The logical mind looks at current circumstances and tries to make predictions. It wants proof. It wants explanation. But speaking from the end is not about logic. It is about persuasion, persuading the subconscious that this is the new truth. Once persuaded, the subconscious orchestrates everything necessary to transform that spoken truth into a lived one. Speaking from the end is not delusion, it is creation. It is choosing the reality you claim, not the reality you see. Every major transformation begins with someone declaring something beyond their present conditions. It begins with a new statement of identity. You are not using words to escape your current reality. You are using words to build the next one. The more consistently you speak from the end, the more you dissolve old patterns of speech rooted in fear, scarcity, or limitation. Your language begins to mirror the life you truly desire. You speak confidently, with authority, from a place of knowing rather than hoping. And as you do, you shift the internal momentum of your life. You plant seeds in your subconscious that grow into outer circumstances aligned with prosperity. When you speak from the end, you are not asking for money. You are assuming the identity of someone who already has it. An identity is destiny. Your words reveal who you believe yourself to be, and your world will always rise to reflect that belief. When you live mentally in the desired experience, you are choosing to occupy the world in which your financial freedom is already a fact. This is not daydreaming, and it is not a temporary escape from current circumstances. It is the deliberate choice to align your inner state with the outcome you seek. The mind does not differentiate between what is physically present and what is vividly imagined. It responds to the feeling you generate, and that feeling becomes the instruction for what must show up in your reality. The moment you imagine from the end, rather than imagining toward it, you shift the entire foundation of your life. Think of yourself opening your banking app and seeing the number you desire. Feel the calm certainty in your chest. Notice how your breath settles, how your shoulders relax, how your mind becomes still. That is the state of abundance. Even though you may not see those numbers yet in the outer world, your inner world has already accepted them. And what is accepted within must express itself without. Imagine paying every bill with ease. Visualize yourself smiling as you click pay, feeling grateful rather than stressed. Hear the confirmation sound of payments processed without strain. Picture yourself closing the laptop or setting down your phone with a peaceful sense of stability. This inner rehearsal is not fantasy, it is a blueprint. The mind constructs patterns through repetition, and once the pattern is accepted, life externalizes it as experience. When you visualize receiving unexpected deposits, feel the surprise that quickly transforms into gratitude. See the notification, deposit received, hear the alert tone. Imagine your reaction, calm, appreciative, confident. You do not wonder how it came. You simply accept it because in your inner world this is normal. It is your new standard. You are not hoping for it. You are not wishing for it. You are living it as though it is already done. Let your imagination place you in scenarios that represent the life you desire. Perhaps you see yourself purchasing something without checking the price. Perhaps you envision saving money effortlessly, watching your accounts grow month after month. Maybe you feel the freedom of knowing that everything you want to do, travel, invest, upgrade your lifestyle, is fully supported. Whatever the scene is, make it simple, short, and emotionally charged. You are not trying to manifest the scene itself. You are using the scene to generate the state. The state is what creates the change. As you return to these imaginal experiences again and again, you will notice a shift. Your reactions change. Your assumptions about money evolve. What once felt distant begins to feel natural. You start to carry yourself differently. You think differently. Decisions that once came from fear begin to come from confidence. This is the evidence that your inner world is leading the outer. Persist, even if the outer world has not yet rearranged. Persistence is not force. It is devotion to the inner reality you choose to inhabit. Every time you return to the feeling of your desire fulfilled, you reinforce the state. And because the outer world is always a reflection of the inner, the outer must comply. It cannot resist the power of a state that has been fully accepted. External circumstances may initially contradict what you are imagining. That is normal. You are seeing the fading remnants of old assumptions. Do not let them influence your new conviction. Instead, acknowledge them as temporary shadows. The moment you stop giving them emotional energy, they begin to dissolve. Hold the feeling of the desired experience with quiet confidence. This inner certainty is the force that transforms your reality. As you persist, you will notice opportunities appear that you could not have planned. Someone reaches out with a business offer. A job promotion materializes. A debt is unexpectedly forgiven. A financial gift arrives. These events are part of the natural bridge of circumstances that lead from your previous state to the new one you have chosen. You do not need to know how they will unfold. You simply maintain the inner feeling, trusting that life knows exactly how to bring it into form. Living mentally in the desired experience does not mean ignoring the physical world. It means refusing to be controlled by it. You acknowledge what is, but you no longer identify with it. Your identification is with the financial reality you have already accepted within. You allow the outer world to catch up in its own time. And it will. Consistently revisiting your desired experience builds an inner momentum that becomes unshakable. Even when conditions seem unchanged, your inner world remains anchored in the end state. This is the key. When it feels natural, when the imagined scene feels more real to you than the current physical state, you have crossed the threshold. Manifestation becomes inevitable. You are not waiting for abundance. You are embodying it. You are rehearsing the life that will soon unfold around you. And as you persist in living mentally from the experience you desire, the outer world has no choice but to rearrange itself accordingly. This is the true creative act, selecting the inner state and remaining loyal to it until it manifests in physical form. When you allow your imagination to override your current circumstances, you step into the only creative power that can transform your financial world from the inside out. Circumstances are not authorities. They are simply the residue of what you previously assumed to be true. They have no inherent power except the meaning you give them. When you stop treating them as fixed facts and begin treating them as temporary reflections, you free yourself to create from the state you prefer rather than the state you fear. This is the turning point where manifestation becomes deliberate instead of accidental. Imagination is not fantasy. It is the blueprint through which your subconscious constructs your future. Every time you imagine from a new state, prosperity, ease, financial freedom, you are issuing an instruction to your inner consciousness. This instruction becomes the seed that grows into outer experiences. The mistake people often make is looking at their current bank balance, debts, or limitations and assuming these conditions must dictate their mood, their belief, and their expectations. But those conditions are echoes of past thoughts and past emotions. They are not predictions of what comes next. They are simply delayed responses to who you used to be. The moment you adopt a new inner truth about money, your outer world begins shifting in ways you may not immediately see. This is why imagination must be used consistently, especially when circumstances contradict the new reality you are building. When you imagine wealth and your external situation shows lack, the temptation is to abandon the assumption and accept the world as final. But the world is not final. It is fluid, responsive, obedient to the dominant inner state. If you hold the new assumption long enough for it to become natural, the outer world must reorganize itself to match it. It cannot do otherwise. Using imagination to override circumstances means giving more authority to your inner experience than your senses. Your senses may tell you that the money is not there, that opportunities are limited, that financial discomfort is unavoidable. But the senses are biased toward what has already happened. They are historians, not creators. Imagination, on the other hand, is prophetic. It shows you what is possible and invites you to inhabit it mentally before it becomes tangible. When you accept your imaginative scene as real, when you feel the relief of financial freedom, the joy of unexpected income, the ease of abundance, you initiate the creative process that compels reality to conform. This approach requires discipline, not force. Discipline in this context means choosing the inner state repeatedly until it dominates your awareness more than the outer world does. You do not fight the conditions. You simply stop feeding them with emotional energy. Instead, you feed the imagined state. You nurture it by returning to it, feeling it, living in it internally, even while the outer world still reflects the old pattern. Over time, the new state becomes your natural dwelling place, and because the outer world is always secondary, it eventually mirrors the new internal truth. Imagine, for example, that your current circumstance shows financial struggle. Bills appear faster than income. Unexpected expenses arise. You feel pressure. If you treat this as final, you reinforce the state of struggle and perpetuate the cycle. But if you use imagination to override it, you choose not to react to the condition as though it has power over your future. Instead, you close your eyes and enter the experience of financial ease. You imagine checking your account and seeing more than enough. You imagine paying everything effortlessly. You imagine feeling calm, secure, supported. You let that feeling settle into your body as though it is happening now. This inner state, although invisible at first, becomes the new cause that must generate new effects. As you practice this, the emotional charge around your circumstances weakens. You begin to feel detached from the old pattern. Your reactions change. You no longer respond to financial challenges with fear, because you have already shifted internally into a state of abundance. This shift in reaction alone is a major indicator that your manifestation is underway. When the inner state stabilizes, the outer world follows through channels you could not have predicted. New opportunities arise, unexpected money appears, debts clear, income increases, and conditions reorganize in your favor. The key is persistence without strain. You are not forcing anything to happen. You are choosing a new inner truth and letting the world catch up. When you use imagination to override circumstances, you are declaring that your inner state, not the visible world, is the master. This positions you as the creator rather than the reactor. You no longer await change, you generate it. Eventually, you reach a point where the imagined reality feels more natural than the old circumstances. And the moment the new state feels natural, the old situation begins dissolving. It cannot persist in the face of a dominant inner assumption that contradicts it. You have replaced the cause, so the effect must change. This is the power of imagination when used deliberately. It frees you from being shaped by circumstances and empowers you to shape them instead. Your financial world transforms when you stop accepting the visible as final and begin adopting the invisible state of wealth as your truth. The world must answer to the inner shift. The moment you claim a new inner reality, the outer world is compelled to rearrange itself in harmony with it. Persisting until the state of abundance feels natural is the silent power behind every rapid financial manifestation. When you first assume a new inner reality, such as being someone who attracts money easily, it may feel unfamiliar or even contradictory to what your senses show you. But that initial resistance is simply the echo of old assumptions. The mind has been conditioned to operate by past experiences, and when you introduce a new state, it takes time for your inner world to reorganize around it. Persistence is the gentle, unwavering return to the truth you have chosen, not the truth that memory or circumstance presents. Each time you revisit the feeling of abundance, you are reinforcing a new mental blueprint. You are training your subconscious to accept wealth as your natural environment, rather than something rare or unpredictable. This process is not about forcing belief. It is about repeatedly visiting the inner experience of already having what you desire until it becomes familiar. Familiarity is the key. Human beings do not manifest what they occasionally think about. They manifest what feels real, what feels normal. The mind gravitates toward what it recognizes as home. Imagine putting on a new pair of shoes. At first, they may feel stiff, different, even slightly uncomfortable. But as you wear them repeatedly, they soften, adjust, and eventually feel like a perfect extension of your body. Persistence operates the same way. You are breaking in a new identity, one that sees wealth as effortless and expected. With each repetition, the feeling becomes less foreign. With each return to the inner state, you loosen the grip of the old patterns that once dictated your financial life. It is crucial to understand that persistence is not about time, it is about intensity of inner acceptance. You might touch the state briefly yet deeply, allowing the feeling of abundance to saturate your awareness, and that moment can carry far more power than hours of half-hearted affirmations. The subconscious responds to conviction, not duration. When you persist, you are strengthening a new conviction that abundance is your natural state of being. And as the feeling becomes natural, everything around you begins to shift. People react differently. Opportunities emerge. Money flows through channels you didn't consciously plan. This shift is not magic, it is alignment. Your outer world has no choice but to match your inner state, and when the inner state is one of certainty, ease, and worthiness, manifestation follows with remarkable speed. The real work is internal. Instead of obsessing over the how, focus on the atmosphere of your inner life. What would it feel like if wealth were normal? If financial ease were your everyday reality? If unexpected money arrived regularly and predictably? Allow yourself to dwell in these feelings, not as fleeting fantasies, but as the emotional climate you choose to inhabit. When doubts arise, return gently to the feeling of abundance. Do not fight the doubt, do not argue with it. Simply replace it with the preferred state. Persistence is not a battle, it is a reselection. You are choosing again, choosing to occupy the identity of someone who has already received. Eventually, this chosen state becomes so natural that the old doubts feel strange and incompatible. As naturalness sets in, you will notice a subtle but profound shift. The desire no longer feels like something that must happen. It feels like something that already has happened, something settled, resolved, completed. The inner struggle dissolves. You no longer question if the money will come or when it will appear. You simply live in the awareness that it is done. This is the threshold at which manifestation moves quickly into form, because nothing in your consciousness is resisting it anymore. There is great power in this naturalness. When abundance feels like the most normal and obvious part of your identity, you stop looking for signs and start living from fulfillment. You stop comparing your current circumstances to your desired outcome, because internally there is no gap. The desire and fulfillment are one. Your reactions, thoughts, and expectations begin to reflect this unity. The world mirrors what you expect, and when wealth becomes your expectation, not a hope, not a distant possibility, but a natural assumption, The world meets you there. Money begins to arrive in ways that defy logic. Events align themselves effortlessly. Conversations, decisions, and opportunities fall into place with uncanny precision. Your task is simply to persist. Continuously return to the feeling of abundance, even if only for a moment at a time. Let the feeling accumulate layer by layer until it becomes the foundation of your inner reality. Do this patiently, consistently, confidently. You are not waiting for the world to change. You are allowing your inner world to solidify into the state that ultimately governs everything outside of you. When the feeling of abundance becomes natural, manifestation is no longer something you try to do. It becomes something that happens through you. Wealth becomes an expression of your state, not a goal you chase. And once this happens, financial transformation is not only possible, it is inevitable. Acting from the identity of wealth means stepping into a version of yourself that already lives in financial ease. It is not fantasy, and it is not make-believe. It is the conscious decision to let your inner world lead your outer results. When you act from this identity, you stop trying to become wealthy and instead express the truth that you already are. The outer world eventually has no choice but to conform to the self you consistently embody. This begins with the smallest internal shifts. When you wake up in the morning, you choose thoughts that match the life you desire, not the one you fear. A person who is financially blessed does not wake up worrying about lack or wondering how things will work out. They move through their day with a quiet inner confidence, a steady knowing that money flows to them through known and unknown channels. You adopt this same inner posture. You carry an inner ease that says, I am supported. Everything I require comes to me in perfect timing. This sense of composure is not about bank balances. It is about identity. Decisions form a crucial part of this identity. When you stand in the identity of wealth, you stop making choices from desperation, scarcity, or fear. You make decisions from intention, clarity, and self-trust. You ask yourself, how would the financially abundant version of me respond to this situation? And you act accordingly. This might mean saying no to things that drain you, investing in things that support your growth, or allowing yourself comfort without guilt. A wealthy identity does not bargain with fear, it moves with certainty. The way you carry yourself also begins to shift. There is a noticeable difference between someone weighed down by lack and someone aligned with abundance. You begin to walk with assurance, speak with clarity, and hold yourself with dignity. You do not shrink back mentally or emotionally. You stand tall in your own worth. You show up to conversations, opportunities, and challenges with the energy of someone who knows they belong. The identity of wealth expresses itself not through arrogance, but through calm, grounded self-possession, a quiet, natural confidence that commands respect. Your thinking expands as well. You no longer entertain thoughts that contradict abundance. When an old idea of limitation arises, you recognize it and replace it with the truth of who you are becoming, or rather, the truth you have chosen to be. You redirect your imagination toward financial ease, possibility, and support. You think in terms of opportunity rather than obstacles. You begin to see money not as something scarce or difficult, but as something responsive to your state of being. Your thoughts shift from, I hope, and maybe one day, to, this is mine, this is natural, and this is inevitable. As you continue to embody this identity, your emotional responses change too. You stop reacting to external circumstances as though they hold authority over you. You may still observe moments of challenge, but you no longer allow them to dictate your inner truth. You respond as someone who knows the outcome is already settled in their favor. Financially abundant individuals do not panic at temporary appearances. They remain anchored in their assumption. So you, too, remain anchored in your inner certainty, knowing that everything in your external world is simply adjusting to your state. This identity also influences your behavior in subtle ways. You begin to take inspired actions that align with your sense of abundance, not because you are forcing results, but because abundance naturally expresses itself through your choices. You may find yourself organizing your finances with clarity, treating your environment with respect, or showing greater generosity, even in small amounts. These behaviors are not strategies to get money. They are symptoms of someone who already possesses the inner reality of wealth. Your behavior confirms your identity. Living from this identity dissolves impatience. You stop looking at the clock or wondering when the manifestation will arrive. The wealthy version of you does not chase outcomes. They assume outcomes. They live in the end. You embrace this same state. You feel fulfilled before receiving, satisfied before the evidence appears. And because you feel fulfilled now, you release the grasping energy that pushes manifestation away. You let things unfold without strain. Over time, you will notice that the world begins responding differently. Opportunities appear with less effort. Ideas come with more clarity. People treat you in alignment with the energy you project. Money begins to flow in ways that feel natural. None of this is forced. It is simply the outer reflection of your inner self-concept. The identity you embody becomes the reality you experience. Acting from the identity of wealth does not require a single external change at first. It only requires a shift in the way you see yourself, the way you think, the way you carry your inner world. When you choose this identity fully, when you claim it, inhabit it, and remain loyal to it, your world cannot help but rise to match it. Wealth becomes not something you pursue, but something you express. Releasing doubt is the moment you finally stop interfering with the very thing you want to receive. Doubt is not a force outside you. It is simply a state of consciousness that insists on questioning what you have already claimed as yours. When you assume the feeling of financial abundance, that assumption is the creative act. The work is already done internally. What remains is the acceptance that it is fulfilled. Acceptance is powerful because it closes the gap between desire and realization. It signals that you trust the unseen process more than the evidence of the physical world. You are no longer looking for signs. You are no longer waiting for confirmation. You simply know. And this knowing is what opens the path for money to move toward you with ease. When you accept the fulfillment, you stop checking. You stop measuring how close you are. You stop comparing yesterday to today. You live as one who already has what they sought. This shift releases enormous energetic resistance. Doubt creates tension, and tension slows creation because it divides your attention between what you want and what you fear. Acceptance unifies your attention. It allows your mind to rest in the end result. This restful confidence becomes the magnet for the conditions, opportunities, and events that make manifestation inevitable. The unseen bridge of events is the natural sequence that forms once you have assumed the state of abundance and then confidently let go. These events are often unpredictable, surprising, and beyond anything your logical mind could have orchestrated. You may find yourself being guided to take certain small actions, meeting someone unexpectedly, receiving an opportunity that appears unrelated, or having an idea that becomes financially fruitful. None of these moments feel forced. They unfold organically because they are expressions of the new state you occupy. You do not need to plan the entire journey. The path reveals itself step by step as long as you remain in the feeling of fulfillment. Releasing doubt does not mean suppressing fear or pretending not to notice old thoughts. It means choosing not to entertain them. When doubt arises, you simply return to the feeling of the fulfilled desire. You do not argue with doubt. You do not negotiate with it. You peacefully withdraw attention from it and shift back into the assumed financial reality you have chosen. Over time, this becomes second nature. Each return to the desired feeling reinforces the identity of abundance, making doubt weaker until it eventually dissolves. Acceptance creates mental silence. This silence is not empty. It is full of certainty. You no longer ask, when will the money come? Or how will it show up? You know it is done. In this silence, the mind becomes receptive. Inspiration flows naturally. You feel calm, assured, and aligned. When actions arise from this calm, they are effective. When opportunities appear in this calm, you recognize them instantly. When money flows through unexpected channels, you are not surprised because you have been dwelling in the expectation of it without anxiously demanding proof. You may notice that the physical world begins shifting subtly at first. Small signs of abundance appear. Perhaps a bill is lower than expected, a refund arrives, a discount shows up, or someone gifts you something of value. These moments are reflections of your new internal state. They are not to be worshipped as signs, but acknowledged as natural evidence of a deeper shift. When you remain steadfast in acceptance, the reflections become larger, more concrete, and increasingly aligned with the wealth you assumed. The reason acceptance is so crucial is that it keeps you out of contradiction. Doubt is contradiction. You cannot assume wealth and simultaneously worry about where it will come from. You cannot claim abundance and simultaneously fret about lack. Acceptance removes this contradiction because it aligns your thoughts, emotions, and inner conversations with the desired outcome as though it is already complete. This inner alignment is what makes manifestation inevitable. Money often arrives in ways you did not plan. This is because the universe, or the subconscious creative power operating through you, has access to a broader network of possibilities than your conscious mind can perceive. When you release doubt, you allow this larger intelligence to work freely. You stop restricting it with narrow expectations. You stop forcing it through specific channels. You become open to all channels, and money flows through whichever one is the most direct. Life becomes cooperative when you release doubt. People respond differently. You attract conversations and opportunities that once seemed out of reach. You move with a sense of ease, and this ease is recognized energetically by the world around you. Money flows where there is no resistance. Acceptance removes resistance at its root. This process is not about waiting. It is about embodying. You do not wait for wealth. You live in the emotional atmosphere of already having it. The moment you release doubt, you step out of the identity of someone trying to manifest and into the identity of someone who already possesses. This identity is the key. It shapes your decisions, your energy, and your expectations. Eventually, the world must conform to that identity because the outer always mirrors the inner. The fulfillment becomes tangible not because you forced it, but because you aligned with it and allowed it. Accepting the fulfillment is the final, quiet, decisive act that completes the manifestation. Once you assume the state and release doubt, money becomes a natural extension of who you have already become within. Your financial transformation begins the moment you choose to dwell in abundance. Assume the feeling, persist in the state, and watch the outer world reshape itself around your inner conviction. Wealth is not far from you. It is within you, waiting to be embodied.